Recently, I was spending another late night on Twitter, completely lost in the sauce when I came across a meme. The caption reads, "Even after my dopamine depleted, I can't stop playing competitive video games. I just love getting angry." Now, barring the fact that there's an image of Peter Griffin on the meme, it has a much bigger meaning. Trust me, and you'll see why by the end of the video. Looking at this, I recall times when I'd get angry at a game like Rust, Counter-Strike, or Overwatch, and all it really took was a series of unfortunate few games, at which point I'd be wishing the worst for all involved, unleashing my inner low-tier god, and throwing a tantrum at my enemies for playing like that, my teammates for whatever they were doing, and myself for how I played. In the heat of the moment, it all feels primal, to the point we might feel the need to smash our keyboards. Now, our desire to keep playing even when we're mad like we're addicted to anger is nonsensical. Nobody wants to play to be mad. Everybody wants to play to win at whatever game. Most of the time, anger is just a byproduct of losing. Duh. When I was playing Overwatch for 12 hours a day, I'd start to get pissed at any little thing that went wrong. At this point, it was most simply the byproduct of the sheer amount of unhealthy time I spent on the game. But at least like an emo, I reasoned that feeling something was better than nothing. But this sort of uncontrollable toxicity that I've slowly gotten myself into over the years has resulted in undeniable consequences on my own life. Feeling like most other non-competitive games suck, and to a further extent, anything else non-stimulating enough that I can't be mad at, like reading a book, just not being worth my precious time. A few years ago, I devised a little strategy for myself. My brain knew that nothing makes us humans more satiated than winning. So, if I wanted to maximize my winnings, maybe I needed to take it a little slower when I got mad, I thought. Right? You're not you when you're hungry. In the same way, you're not really a gamer when you're mad. Besides, is that an unreasonable wish to be happy and not angry with my leisurely time? Historically, everything from the Colosseum's battles to today's online gaming is all the same for our brain's competitive nature. We're genetically predisposed to compare ourselves to each other as a form of competition. While back in the day it might have been who was better at gladiator fighting, in today's day and age, it's more like who has the highest rank in CSGO, or the highest KD in Call of Duty. You get it. Unsurprisingly, a victory over your opponents in a fair match of Counter-Strike doesn't need translation. You just click on the enemies when they pop up on your screen until you win. And because of this, I'm very much into playing Counter-Strike myself, periodically sucked back into it when it calls for me. Every single time, replaying the same maps, using the same weapons, and always having an unsustainable addiction to the weapon skins and matchmaking. Nothing beats this replayability of fair, competitive gaming. But when we compete, besides internally feeling good about our own wins, we also feel important because of the outside energy coming to us. Our friends and teammates will be happy to play with us, and it's always good to have someone make good calls or have someone be good at clutch plays. You feel respected for your presence and your capabilities. When you know that queuing without that one friend will make you lose because who else is gonna carry your ass out of the silver ranks, as you keep texting them to get the fuck on because you don't want to lose. That's respect. And then, chasing this type of respect from my teammates and friends alike, I've been spiraling down the path of grinding competitive games for a long time now. And as I'm on this goose chase for recognition, over time, I've failed to see just how much my behavior has spilled over to single player games like a toxic leak. Comparing myself to others on how well I played, how fast I completed a game, or whatever other arbitrary metric there is to measure my performance, I found out it's like I'm too competitive, for no good reason. I would try to sit down to enjoy a peaceful game, like a story game, but no, I would get mad when I have a stupid death. Like, what's wrong with me that I can't even get past an AI who has predictable movement and shooting patterns, right? And in doing so, all I've done was handicap my own gaming. And is it really surprising now to see the top charts of player counts always being the same titans of competitive gaming forever, as if we're all blind to the world that's beyond this small selection of competitive games? So, realizing my brain was so deep fried that even the most chill single player games or something like book reading was too much to ask for, I decided to pick up walking. Absurdly long walks, for no other reasons than to clear my head. So I'd walk and walk until I got tired and my legs are either giving out or it's getting so freaking cold outside because Canada's weather isn't messing around. Hours upon hours of just strolling along, completely isolated with my thoughts and my hour-long music playlists. Surprisingly, compared to everything else that's supposedly just as boring, I somehow managed to put up with walking. I believe this to be the case since it's a little different and therapeutic in a way, because I actually had time to think about everything, rather than being distracted by another process. As in, walking is the closest activity I know of that takes up minimal resources from our brain's computing power, while not being exactly on autopilot, essentially leaving the other 99% of our brain to have a solid time to reflect on what's important. Think of it as like our digestive system, right? I'd give my brain a little time to unfry itself and process the competitive CS:GO omelette and other life-related things by having some time to myself. Sometimes when I really needed to get my emotions out, I'd play the saddest songs ever in my headphones, like Echoes by Pink Floyd, and I'd try my hardest to not let go of my tears as this 20 minutes masterpiece has me invested in a melodic storm of story I never knew could bring out so many feelings out at once. Other times, I'd adapt my music according to the mood, and it almost always amplified the results. And so my logic was that if I wanted to get out of a state of sadness or anger, I should process all my feelings with time and so-called music therapy. But this one time, I was walking along during a cold fall evening, and it was shivering cold outside, so not bothering, I quickly just put on my coat, sweatpants, and started walking along in a direction I'd never fully explored before. And a few hours in my headphones, hands in pockets, looking down on the sidewalk like an emo, still in disbelief about how I lost an overtime match in Counter-Strike, only to be called a bunch of slurs by my teammates, I knew it was gonna be a long walk. And suddenly, I came across one of my friends, but completely not in the mood to talk and yet not wanting to be a shitty friend. I was sort of forced to stick around for a few minutes to catch up into an unskippable cutscene. It turns out, they were actually coming home from work, and when the question came to, well, what are you actually doing here on this evening? I just made up a lie on the spot about how I'm actually coming home from a party. Yeah. On that day, I cut my walk short and took the bus home. It was just not gonna be the same after. But while on my way home, I really considered one thing. What the hell am I actually doing all this for? All this stupid walking because I'm mad at a video game? And to which I will still inevitably come back one day or another. But with hindsight, the results are clear. To a certain extent, my method worked. Time heals all wounds, I suppose. It's just that sometimes it would take me a long ass time before I finally felt like I was more in touch with myself. For a good time, you can daydream in a positive mood, so I highly recommend it to all if you have the spare time during your breaks. Trust me, it works for life in general. Besides, countless creative geniuses like Einstein, Beethoven, and Freud enjoyed long walks, so give it a try. But for a more time-effective method, I knew going for a hike every time an inconvenience occurred in my life was not effective. I still needed to get over my deep-frying competitive gaming addiction if I wanted to pick myself up from the ground. And to defy myself, I've picked up a game, and I made an experiment to try and combat my toxic issue of being unable to stop and smell the flowers for once. Realizing that, so long as I compare myself to those I see, I will never be free. So what if I just played in my own bubble? Noita. Out of all the games you could think of to try and reach Zen, I've picked up Noita, a roguelike where you play as this wizard with an arsenal of wands and spells you can find in the wild. Now, for those who've already played this game and know just how brutal it is, stick with me here. I promise this will make sense. To win, just descend down the mines and try your best to not die from the millions of things around you. Especially yourself. The learning curve of the game is really steep, and your in-game character is really weak against all elements. You'll often be dying slow deaths from fire, acid, and poison, until you realize you can douse yourself with some water. Explosions and different types of enemies are going to surprise you with their attacks, unexpectedly getting hit with an electrified projectile that shocks the water you're in, killing you in an instant, like you would become toast in real life with a toaster in your bath. Okay, lesson learned. Avoid being in harmful liquids as much as possible. Then, as you explore with your newfound knowledge, you might come across an enemy that shoots out some curses. One of the worst ones is the teleport curse, which frantically teleports you to a random spot in a small radius, be it some deadly lava, acid, or in the middle of a horde of enemies. But, of course, you're not defenseless either. As the wizard you are, you have some wands to use and spells to cast on your enemies. When you play, as you descend down the mine, you'll periodically reach the Holy Mountain. They're hard to miss, and serve as a transition before the next cave. If you take the portal, you're taken to a quote-unquote safe spot, where you can restore your hearts, refresh all your spells, buy up some new equipment with the gold you obtain from killing enemies and finding some chests, and at last, take a unique power-up before heading out. Honestly, the most fun you can have is here, the drawing board of Noita. You can experiment with your wands and try out different spell combinations, especially since there's so many variables to consider when creating your weapon of choice. It's overwhelming and engaging. For example, attack speed and reload speed are self-explanatory, but one of the most important lessons you sort of have to understand through trial and error is the shuffling stat. If a wand has, say, 5 spell slots, and it's a non-shuffling wand, it will cast them in order from left to right according to its other stats, allowing you to do some creative setups. I'll have this weak fast-traveling machine gun-like wand full of spark bolts that applies a personal circle gravity effect on any enemy hit. Essentially, whatever projectile tries to pass through them will get sucked into the circle. Then, I have a second wand full of explosive bolts that I use on the enemies. This one synergizes with my other wand because all the heavy explosives are sucked into the enemy, largely negating the risk of blowing my own self up. And yes, blowing yourself up is one of the biggest concerns of this game, and is largely one of the reasons this game is so hard. Since the Holy Mountain is the only space where you can modify your wands, it's essentially like a scientist's laboratory. And, like all the teachers used to say, if you don't put on your lab coat and safety glasses, you risk your life. So be careful, and make sure your wands are non-shuffling before firing 25 missile spells at once with a zigzag path modifier. Furthermore, if you do, and manage to break any of the lab's equipment, the teacher's gonna get mad at you. That is, Stevari, the Noita god that comes out if you try to break the Holy Mountain. While the disadvantage of having the gods angry is that your safe spot is no longer safe, you can now stretch the game to its max. What's stopping you from going back to the earliest levels you were weak in and collecting all the hearts you missed? Or even simply going back to the Holy Mountain to modify your wand? And of course, this game is well known by its fans for its intricate secrets. The Noita world is huge, and when you think you've beaten the game by descending to the bottom of the cave, just a little backtracking with your newfound tools opens up a lot of new areas. While at the beginning when you spawn at the front entrance, the outside might seem like one big dead end, but after your mining expedition you found a couple of potions to fly and run faster, or whatever other creative method you have in mind, and suddenly the world's your oyster, free to explore. That's the basics of Noita. See, a recurring theme throughout my explanations of the core parts of the game is that you have to be creative and explore. Those who go off the beaten path are rewarded with extra loot and get the chance to solve some intricate puzzles. Maybe a little too intricate. Let's not forget, however, that this is Noita. You're still gonna get your ass beaten, right? Like for example, on stage 1 of the cave, there's a huge lava lake on the right side. It would seem like it's just there to indicate the end of the cave, but that's not true. If you find a way to get past it, you eventually arrive at this sort of temple. Oh, is that a shiny power-up orb? Hey, thanks game. I'm so smart and deserve to be rewarded for figuring out you can cast some water on top of the lava to create a safe passage. Never mind. But that's part of the joy of the game. It is only through thorough research and development that you can advance. And I believe you cannot get the full innocent experience knowing the puzzle solutions or a good wand spell combination beforehand. Like, if you'd seen a spoiler, and I know I'm not particularly helping with this video, but I'm trying to stay as surface level as possible to ensure to not ruin anybody's first experience, and you knew exactly what happens at each location, then, like somebody holding your hand, you wouldn't have the innate desire for exploration, because you already know that, okay, this place's loot sucks, this power-up is a trap, don't waste your time here, and so on. And so, what I'm getting at now is that how can you really get mad at this game? It's borderline comical how you can go from a lab rat trying to get to the next holy mountain to heal up, to being the evil R&D scientist wizard sponsored by freaking Blackstone on your way to destroy every living creature in this cave. And when I quote-unquote unfairly die to my own wand with 20 explosive shuffling casts and a bunch of modifiers, I can't help but just laughingly exhale some air from my nose and move on. So after countless trials and errors, countless losses, the windscreen is oh so worth it. So, what's the takeaway from all this? I for one can attest to the fact that my methods work to a certain extent to help me take it easy. But take it from the Harvard grads and their research papers instead. Walking has been proven to be a great activity for pretty much everything. Just with minimal amounts of walking per week, as low as 3 hours, you can decrease your chances of falling over and dying from a heart attack by 30%. For our mental health, some doctors prescribe walks now as a means to treat grief, anxiety, or depression. And as for Noita, well, I can't really say that it's been proven to be a healthy game by any scientist, but I can attest that it has helped me. That moreover, the problems I faced bore similarities to something akin to social media addiction, a problem actually extensively studied by professionals in recent years. By wishing to be great at competitive video games and our innate desire to compare ourselves to others through ranks and KD ratios, sometimes we lose track of what makes us human. In the same way that when we scroll Instagram and see those hot models in bikinis partying on yachts, we can't help but feel sorry for ourselves and think of us as complete failures as we sit in our underwear still stuck in Silver 1. Fuck! The science says that our digital era of fully immersed online lives has proved to be dangerous for our frail bodies. A research paper by the Journal of Behavioral Addictions has found a stark correlation between depression and problematic social media usage. The main reason for this is, quote, many users tend to present an idealized version of themselves and their lives. Thus, social media users are likely to believe that others are happier and living a better life than they are. Essentially, it's a game of trying to outdo the other. And if we're overexposed to upwards media, or in other words, posts that we feel are coming from a higher point of status than we are, then we start to lose confidence in our own selves. If you don't know what I'm talking about, just take a quick look at LinkedIn. Now, I believe in gaming, especially in competitive online gaming, we have a similar problem. So people, while scientists are still debating social media addiction, I think it's time we wake up and realize what some of the gaming is doing to us. And you wanna know why it's important? Well, because most of the people writing these types of papers don't even have time to game. Busy with assignments and work, they don't even know what it's like in the gaming trenches of matchmaking at 3 AM. Like I said, there's plenty of good gaming you can do. I remember hearing this analogy that gaming is like food. You know, you got junk foods, like Call of Duty, and then you have your salad, like Noita. So maybe if you ever feel like your CSGO omelette diet is breaking you, then switch it up, take a walk, and try to ignore the noise around you. There's always gonna be some prick with a better rank, and there's always gonna be someone with fancier skins. When I played Noita, I focused on ignoring all content before I completed the game, going in blind and ignoring all the noise around me. I had my experience, and in the end, while I may not have done it efficiently, I felt good about it. So, as I lay this game down and feel like going for my next walk, I get the urge to take a little detour and visit the library to work on my assignments.